Hello everyone, before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching that way. YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. I had been needing a break for a while. 40-hour work weeks had turned into 60, and the idea of answering another email made my left eye twitch. So I booked a solo cruise leaving from Miami. It was a last-minute deal for a 7-day trip around the Caribbean. I didn't even care where it was going. I just wanted to relax. No meetings, no to-do lists, just ocean breeze in a cabin where nobody knew me. I only told my sister and a coworker I trusted to cover me. I got on the ship with a book noise, canceling headphones and no real plans. The room they gave me was small, but okay. Little porthole view, a small bed in a bathroom that looked like it had been fixed up sometime in the last 10 years. The bathroom door was one of those thick old kinds that swing inward, like in older hotels from the first night. Though something felt weird around 3:15 a.m., the door would slowly open. Not swing wide, just inch open like someone was carefully pushing it bit by bit. I thought maybe the ship's motion was doing it, but the door was heavy and always clicked shut when I closed it. Still, I started sticking a towel under it. Before bed didn't help, the second night it happened again, same time around 3:10 to 3:20. I checked the towel. It was still in place. The room didn't feel like it was moving. The door opened slowly and quietly, like someone invisible was easing it open. No wind, no noise from the engines, just that soft creak and a small shift in the air. When it opened by the third night, I was more irritated than scared. I called maintenance and asked if they could look at the hinges or maybe check if the ship was off balance. A guy named Ricardo came up the next morning, did a quick check, and told me everything was fine. "This door won't open by itself, man. It's too heavy," he said, giving it a small push. "If anything, it should stay shut." I decided to record it. I set up my phone on a coffee mug across the room, pointing it straight at the bathroom door. That night I shoved the towel under again, clicked the door shut hard, and hit record around 3 a.m. I woke up at 6 and went right for the phone. I expected maybe nothing or just a slow swing. But at 3:16 the door creaked open, slow and careful. But it wasn't the door that got to me. It was the mirror in the reflection for just a second. There was someone behind where I was sleeping, a man tall, thin, wearing a suit. But something wasn't right about him. His arms were just a bit too long, and his head looked like it wasn't sitting right on his neck. I sat staring at my phone like I was frozen. I kept going back and forth, trying to tell myself it was just a shadow. Or maybe a weird reflection from the TV, but the TV was off. The lights were off. The only light in the room came from the hallway under the door. I paused the video on the exact frame where the man was behind me. He wasn't fuzzy, he was way too clear. The mirror showed him like he was really there, except he wasn't. I remember jumping out of bed, turning on all the lights and checking the whole room. Nothing, no one, just quiet, and the sound of my heart pounding. I went to security. I didn't say ghost or anything weird. I just said I thought someone might have been in my room. I showed the video to a guy at the security desk, a younger guy named Josh, who looked like he wasn't paid enough for this. He watched the clip, leaned in as the door opened, and then the video glitched right at 3:16. The screen went black for 2 seconds, and when it came back, it had skipped over that whole part. Josh asked me to send the video to their system. I did, but when they opened it on their screen, the file was corrupted. Wouldn't play past the door opening. Might have been a transfer problem, he said, but I could tell he didn't really believe that later. That night I got a call from the front desk. They asked if they could send someone to check on my room. They said it was for maintenance or some internal review. I said sure, even though it didn't really make sense. About an hour later, a woman from housekeeping showed up, clipboard in hand. She was polite but distant. Her name tag said Margot. She didn't come all the way in, just looked around, peeked into the bathroom, and made some notes. I asked her straight up if anyone had said anything weird about this room. She paused for a second, then said, "No, sir, not that I'm aware of." In that flat voice people use when they're hiding something, just as she was leaving, she said quietly, almost like she didn't mean for me to hear, "This room stayed empty for a while after the accident, but I don't know details." I couldn't let that go. I went to the passenger desk the next day and asked if I could see old records or reports for the cabin. They looked surprised, then the woman asked for my room number, typed it in, and her face changed just a little, like she was trying not to react. "Unfortunately, I can't share guest records," she said. I asked if she could at least confirm if something had happened in the room. She typed again, frowned, and said, "The system shows this room was unoccupied for almost 11 months before you checked in." She said it like that was normal. Almost a year empty with no reason. I asked why, and she just said, "I'm not allowed to talk about that," and turned away after that. I couldn't relax in the cabin, even with all the lights on, even with the door blocked. I kept looking at the mirror. Not the door, but the mirror, like my brain decided that's where the danger was. I barely slept that night. Every little noise from the ship sounded like someone walking at one point. I swear I heard someone breathe, not a snore or a sigh, just one slow breath right behind me. I turned around, heart pounding, and of course, nothing but the bathroom door was open again. I had even shoved a shoe under it. This time didn't matter. I really thought about leaving the cruise at the next port, but I didn't want to explain, so instead, I just asked to change cabins. Didn't make it a big deal, just said I wasn't sleeping well. The woman at the desk didn't question me. She just nodded, typed something, and gave me a room 2 floors up. The new room was a bit smaller, no window, but the bathroom door stayed shut all night. No noise, no movement. Not once. I stayed in that room the last 3 nights, and nothing strange happened. I didn't record anything either. I just wanted to finish the trip and go home when I got back. I tried to fix the video. I had uploaded it to my cloud before showing it to security, and I hoped the original was still okay, but it wasn't. It still glitched right at 3:16, just when the door opened and the figure showed up. I ran it through 2 recovery programs. Nothing worked. It was like the file got erased right in that moment. I gave up after that. I still have the phone, and I haven't deleted the clip, but I don't watch it anymore. It feels like it wants to be forgotten. Somehow, every time I open the folder, my phone freezes or lags, just for a second, enough to make me close it. I don't say, "I know what happened in that cabin." Maybe there's a real reason hidden in a report they won't show. Or maybe I just ended up in the wrong room at the wrong time, with something left behind, someone left behind. But the part that sticks with me is this. On the last day when I was checking out and rolling my suitcase toward the elevators, I passed Margot again. She didn't smile or say hi. She just looked at me and said under her breath, like it wasn't meant for me at all, "You shouldn't have recorded it." I took that cruise last spring, about 2 months after my divorce was finalized. My friends tried to talk me into a girls' trip to Vegas, but I wasn't in the mood for loud places or pretending I was having fun. The cruise sounded quieter, and I really just needed a few days to float and think, with no one needing me. It was one of those average cruise lines, not cheap but not luxury either. My cabin had a balcony, and I thought the ocean might help me breathe again. I spent the first couple of days reading, sipping fruity drinks, and walking the decks alone just after sunrise for the first time in years. I felt invisible in a good way, peaceful. I found the casino on the third night. I hadn't planned to gamble. I just followed the soft sounds of bells and jazzy music after dinner. It was almost empty, just a few people at slot machines and 2 crew members behind the cashier. One of them had a thick beard and a crooked bow tie. and nodded at me when I came in. He had one of those faces that looked kind by default, soft features and tired eyes like he worked long hours without complaining. I didn't think much of him. Then I sat at a penny slot near the back and started pushing buttons. Not really caring, just zoning out to the lights and sounds. I don't know how long I sat there, but it wasn't more than half an hour when I hit something big. The machine lit up like crazy and poured out a bunch of credits I hadn't even noticed I'd won. It wasn't just the money, it was a strange high. Like I'd finally been given a moment to enjoy something. The same bearded staff guy came over and congratulated me, asked if I wanted a picture by the machine for their winners. While I laughed and said, no thanks, he didn't argue, just nodded again and said, lucky night. I think that's when I first noticed something strange in his eyes, not scary exactly. More like he knew something I didn't yet back in my cabin. I ordered a bottle of white wine using the app and sat out on the balcony for a bit, letting the sea air hit my skin. I remember getting undressed in front of the mirror without thinking twice. I wasn't used to being by myself, to having a space where I didn't feel watched. At least that's what I thought. I fell asleep with the curtains half open and the TV playing some random courtroom show. Nothing about the night seemed weird until I woke up the next morning and saw the envelope someone had slid under my door. No name, no label, just a plain white envelope with one photo inside. And the second I saw it, I felt the air leave my body. I stared at the photo for what felt like forever, before I could even understand what I was looking at. It was a still image printed on shiny paper, clearly taken from some kind of camera feed. The angle was just a little above eye level from a corner of the room I'd never really looked at before. But what hit me was what the photo showed me the night before, halfway undressed taking off my bra. Totally unaware the lighting was the same, that yellowish tone with the TV flickering behind me. My heart was beating so loud I couldn't hear anything else. It wasn't just creepy. It felt targeted, like someone had chosen that exact moment on purpose. I tore the room apart, searching for a camera. My first thought was I'd been hacked, or something like those stories you hear about people hiding tiny cameras in alarm clocks or smoke detectors. I climbed onto the chair and checked every part of the ceiling. The only thing up there was a black dome in the corner. I had noticed it when I first checked in and thought it was just a motion sensor or something for maintenance. But now that I was looking at it closely, I could see a tiny red ring around the lens. It was a camera, one that no one had told me about. One that definitely wasn't supposed to be recording inside a private cabin. I went down to guest services trying to stay calm, holding the envelope against my chest. The woman at the desk smiled like she was ready to hear someone complain about towels or drinks. Not this when I asked her about the camera in my cabin. Her face barely changed. She said all cabins had a dome for maintenance checks, but they weren't active and couldn't record. I asked again, clearly showing her the photo, and that's when her expression shifted. Not shocked, just unsure, like she was trying to decide what she was allowed to say. She asked me to wait and went through a door behind the desk without saying anything else. A man in a dark blazer came out. Instead, he said his name was Eric and that he was part of the ship's security team, and asked if I could come into a small office to talk more about it. The way he said it made me feel like I was in trouble. The office had no windows and was freezing cold. Eric sat across from me with a stiff smile that never really reached his eyes. I put the photo on the table. He didn't touch it. He just looked at it for a little too long. Then he asked when I found it, what time I went to bed, and if anyone had been in the room with me. That last question made me feel sick. I asked him straight if someone on the ship had access to cameras in the cabins. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up, walked over to a small cabinet, and pulled out a plain gray folder. When he set it down in front of me, my hands were actually shaking. Inside the folder were 6 photos, all printed like mine. Different rooms, different women. Some were brushing their teeth. One was crying into a towel. One was asleep with her back turned, her bra strap clearly visible. None of them knew they were being watched. None of them were posing. Eric didn't say where the pictures came from. He just quietly said there had been a recent tech issue with their security system. Apparently, someone figured out how to reroute a few of the camera feeds, the ones used for staff monitoring, and had made them record instead of just showing live footage. It had been happening for weeks, maybe longer, he wouldn't say directly, but it was pretty obvious someone working on board had done it. Someone with high-level access. I asked if it was the casino guy, the one with the beard and bow tie. Eric didn't say yes, but the way he looked down at the folder told me I was right. He said someone had already been taken off staff duties and that legal action was being taken. But the way he said it felt like a script written by lawyers. When I asked if the women in the other pictures had been contacted, he said they had, but I could tell from his eyes that wasn't true. I was probably the first one to come forward. The envelope under my door wasn't a warning. It was a mistake. They offered me money, of course, a full refund and credit for another cruise, which made me laugh like it was some kind of bad joke. I signed an NDA in that cold little office because I just wanted to get off that ship. I flew home the next day, still shaking every time I saw myself in the mirror for weeks. I kept my bedroom curtains closed and unplugged. Anything that had a lens or a small light. My therapist said I was dealing with something called situational paranoia. But it didn't feel like that to me. It felt more like I had seen something I wasn't supposed to, something too real, too close. We all think we're safe during those little private moments when we're showering or getting dressed or crying when no one's around. But that cruise showed me just how easy it is for someone to cross that line. I still have that photo. I keep it in a locked drawer folded down the middle, not because I want to look at it, but because I'm scared of forgetting it. They tried to fix it with some forms and saying sorry, but it didn't change the fact that someone had watched me at a time when I felt most alone, someone I looked right at and even thanked for helping me. And I still don't know how many others he saw or what he did with the footage he had. I never took that second cruise. I never got back on another ship. And to this day, every time I stay in a hotel or rent a place, I look at the ceiling corners before I even unpack. You don't go back to normal after something like that. After finding out you were the show, and someone out there might still have your most private moment saved on file. I hadn't planned on going on that cruise. It was actually my mom's idea. She found a last-minute deal online and thought it would be a great way for us to spend some time together before summer got too busy. I was between jobs, single again after a short relationship, and honestly, just needed a change of scenery. So I said yes. The ship left from Galveston and was set for a 7-day loop through the Gulf with stops in Cozumel and Roatan. Nothing fancy, just beaches, buffets, and a chance to unwind. Our cabin was at the very end of one of those long, quiet hallways where barely anyone walks past. Next to our room was a door marked crew only that led to a narrow stairwell we weren't allowed to use. I remember thinking our spot was perfect, peaceful and out of the way. No noise from people coming and going late at night. The hallway walls were this soft beige color with little lights every few feet, giving off a warm, low glow. It smelled like a mix of salt water and strong cleaner. Most nights I fell asleep easily after dinner and a few drinks. But by the third night, I started waking up around the same time, just after 2 a.m. It started with footsteps, not loud but clear. The sharp tapping sound of heels walking. Not the heavy clunk you hear on stage or pavement, but lighter, steadier. Like each step was carefully placed, and they always came from down the hallway, slowly approaching, and always stopped right in front of our door. Not nearby, not next to it, our exact door. The first night I just froze and listened thinking maybe they'd knock or try the handle. But nothing happened, only silence. When I finally got brave enough to peek through the peephole, there was no one there. By the fourth night, it had become a pattern. I'd wake up without even meaning to, and my heart would already be racing. Before I opened my eyes, the footsteps would follow same pace, same timing, and always stopping outside our door. I kept telling myself it could be someone from the crew, maybe walking back from somewhere on a weird shift. But that made less and less sense. Why would someone in heels be walking alone down a hallway that ended in our room and a locked stairwell one night? I stayed awake with the lights off, holding my phone ready to catch them. The second I heard that first step, I jumped up and looked through the peephole, but the hallway was empty, still and quiet, with only the buzzing from the ceiling lights on the fifth night. I didn't wait the moment I heard the last step stop outside our door. I opened it fast. I wasn't sure what I'd see. Maybe a surprise worker, but instead I saw the edge of a figure turning the corner at the far end of the hallway. Just before the stairwell door closed behind her, she wore a long navy blue uniform, like the kind flight attendants used to wear in old ads, with a stiff collar and a small hat pinned to her dark hair. The clothes looked old, like something from another time, and the way she moved wasn't normal either. Too straight, too smooth, like she was floating. Not walking, I just stood there in the doorway listening. The sound of her heels was gone, swallowed up by the closing door. I could hear the ship engines and a TV from another room, but nothing else behind me. My mom was waking up asking what I was doing. I told her someone was walking the halls, and she mumbled something about calling security before falling back asleep. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I went to the front desk and told them what I saw. The woman working looked confused when I mentioned the uniform. She said no one on the crew wore anything like that, and definitely not at night. I could tell she didn't believe me, or thought I was just mistaken. Back in our cabin, I couldn't stop thinking about the outfit. It felt too exact, too meaningful. I searched online for old cruise uniforms, but nothing matched. The closest I found was an old ad from the 80s for a cruise line that didn't even exist anymore, but it still wasn't quite the same. Later that day, I passed a real crew member by the dining hall and asked casually about the stairwell near our room. He gave me this odd look and said it hadn't been used in years. He said it used to connect to an old staff route on the lower decks, but had been shut down during renovations. That didn't make sense, though. The door still worked. I saw her go through it on our last day. While packing, my mom pulled out an old family photo album. She said she brought it so we could look at pictures from our very first cruise back in the 90s when I was little. I was flipping through the plastic photo pages, laughing at her old haircut and my dad's giant mustache. When I stopped, one of the pictures had been taken on the ship's deck back in 1994, and in the background, partly hidden behind a lifeboat, I saw her, a blurry shape in a navy blue skirt, a stiff top, a small tilted hat over dark hair. She wasn't smiling, wasn't even looking at the camera, just standing there in the sunlight facing away, like she was staring at something that wasn't there. I didn't say anything right away. I just kept staring at that picture, like if I blinked it might disappear or change. My mom leaned over, trying to see what I was looking at, and I asked her casually, "Do you remember this woman?" She squinted, shrugged, and said it was probably just another passenger in the background. I nodded like I believed her, but inside I went cold. I knew what I had seen, the exact lines of that uniform, the strange little hat, even the way she stood. It was the same woman from the hallway. But that photo was taken decades ago on a completely different cruise ship. The date printed in the corner said July 1994. I was 3 years old then. That night back home, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I tried to come up with normal reasons. Maybe the ship reused old uniforms for some theme night, or maybe I was just remembering it wrong. But she had stopped right at our door, vanished through a stairwell no one was supposed to use, and now she was in that photo. It didn't make sense, and this part won't sound right, but she didn't feel scary, just intentional, like she was there for a reason, like she was checking on someone or something. I started wondering if anyone else had ever seen her too. But when I searched online, I found nothing. A few days later, I emailed the cruise company's customer service. I didn't think they'd reply. I described the uniform and even attached a scan of the old photo. 2 weeks later, they sent back a short message saying they had no records of uniforms matching that description and that the stairwell next to our old cabin had been permanently sealed after a fire drill went wrong in the early 2000s. No one should have been able to open it from the guest floor. No explanation, no other info. That was it. I read the message over and over trying to find more in it, but there was nothing else. I still have the photo. It's in a drawer by my bed. Sometimes I take it out and stare at that small shape in the background. She's blurry, but not enough to be a mistake or a light trick. I don't know what she wanted or why she kept stopping by our door, but I know what I saw. And ever since that night, I can't shake the feeling that she knew I saw her too. Like maybe for some reason, I was meant to. I started working overnight cleaning shifts on cruise ships about a year after my ex-wife left. My son Ethan was 6 then, and my sister helped watch him while I was gone. It wasn't the best setup, but the pay was better than anything I could find back home in Tampa. The hours were rough, and the days all started blending together. But I managed. I mostly kept to myself, rolling the mop cart through long halls, trying to stay focused with podcasts and the occasional smoke break chat with someone from the kitchen crew. The job had a strange kind of quiet to it, not peaceful, more like a heavy silence, the kind that makes you feel like someone's always watching, even when they're not. On the fourth day of a 10-day trip around the Caribbean, I met the guy. He was sitting alone near the back of the Leo deck one night, long after most of the guests had gone to bed. I was collecting trash when he called out to me, said something about how the ocean at night made him feel small. His name was Drew. He looked thin, pale, maybe in his early 40s, and he had dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. The way he spoke was quiet, like every word had to fight its way out. I figured he was just lonely. Happens all the time on these ships. People pay a lot to get away from everything and still end up feeling more alone. Over the next few nights, I'd see him again, always late, always in the same spot on that bench near the railing. We'd talk a little each time. He asked about the ship, my schedule, how long I'd been doing this. Said he was a freelance writer working on a book about being alone at sea. I didn't think much about it. Honestly, it was kind of nice to talk to someone who wasn't drunk or yelling. He even joked about how I probably had access to every door on the ship. I laughed and said the master badge was the only real perk of the job. When he smiled at that, I should have known something was off, but I didn't. 3 days later, Drew wasn't on the deck, or the next night. I figured he left at the last port, but that night when I started my shift, I noticed something right away. My locker was slightly open. I always make sure it's shut tight. Inside, my uniform jacket was gone. So was my access badge, the master one, the one that gets you through almost every door that's not for guests. My stomach dropped. I went to security, but they didn't seem too worried. Said it was probably a mix-up. I had to work the rest of the night without that badge, and I felt exposed. Every hallway felt different. Every door I passed felt like it was watching me. Things got really strange the next night. There was a report of a break-in at the ship's jewelry store. No cameras in the back room, but someone had used a master badge to open 2 secure doors. Not much was stolen, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Security pulled me aside. 2 guys I barely knew, and asked questions about my badge, my schedule, and if I'd given my uniform to anyone. I told them the truth. It was stolen, but they just looked at each other like they'd heard it all before. Said they'd check the cameras. That line stuck with me. Not "we'll help" or "let's find out what happened." Just "we'll check footage." For the next day or two, I felt like I was under a dark cloud. Crew members avoided me. The chef who used to offer me extra pastries didn't even look at me. My supervisor gave me a replacement badge, but it didn't have full access anymore. It felt like a punishment. Then, 2 nights later, someone tried to get into the engine room. Security caught it before they got through. Whoever it was had the right badge but ran when the door didn't open. That's when they finally took it seriously. They brought me to the camera room and showed me the footage. At first, it just looked like a tall man in a janitor's uniform walking down D-deck like he belonged there. But then he turned to face the camera for just a second, and my whole body froze. It was Drew. He was wearing my uniform. My badge was clipped to his chest. He had even shaved to look more like me. Same dark cap pulled low. Same way of walking. Sure, here is a rewritten version of your full script in simpler and easier to read language. I've kept the paragraph structure and length as close as possible while simplifying the wording and sentence structure throughout. I hadn't known him. I would have thought it was me. It felt like I was staring at my own shadow. One of the guards said something like, "He must have planned this," but I couldn't think straight. My heart was beating so fast, it felt like my eardrums were shaking with it. They paused the footage on his face, and all I could say was, "That's not me." The head of security leaned in, stared at me for a long time, and said, "He's not in the system. No room, no booking, no ID." That didn't make sense. He had a room key. I'd seen it. We talked for days. How does someone live on a ship without being listed anywhere? The next morning, the ship docked in Puerto Rico. The security team searched the entire ship. Every room, every hallway. Nothing. Drew, or whoever he really was gone. Vanished. His room was totally empty. No clothes, no suitcase, no notebook. Just an empty mug on the table out on the balcony and a towel folded on the bed, like he had done the turn-down service himself. It was like he never existed, but he wore my name, my badge, my uniform. He walked around acting like me, and for a while, he got away with it. After that, nothing really felt normal again. I finished that cruise contract, but I stayed away from people more than usual. I didn't trust anyone, not even myself. I kept going over every talk I had with him, trying to find clues, trying to remember if he said anything strange, anything that should have warned me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized he didn't just talk to me, he studied me. The way I stood, the way I talked, my routine. No one had ever paid that much attention to me before, and honestly, it made my stomach turn. A few weeks after I got back to Florida, I got a letter from the DMV. It said my license was suspended because of a DUI in Oregon. I've never even been to Oregon. I thought it was a scam until I called. They gave me my full name, birth date, and social security number. My whole body went cold. I hung up and called the sheriff's office in that county. They confirmed someone had been arrested using my name. The mugshot was grainy and taken in bad lighting, but it looked a lot like Drew, or whoever he was. I spent the next few months with a lawyer trying to fix everything. The identity theft messed up my taxes, my credit, and even my job clearance. I had to carry notarized letters just to prove who I was. But the worst part wasn't the paperwork. It was the fact that someone lived as me, like he wore my life like a costume. Then he disappeared without a trace. No reason, no trail, no answers. Just gone, like a ghost. I still work on cruise ships now and then. I change companies every few contracts. I keep my badge hidden under my shirt, and I check my locker 3 times before every shift. But sometimes late at night, when I'm staring out at the ocean, I wonder if he's still out there, on another ship watching someone else, stealing a new name, a new face. And I wonder if I was just one stop for him, just another uniform to borrow. I haven't seen him again, but I don't think it's over. My wife Brooke and I had been married for only 9 days when we got on the cruise. Just a short trip, 5 nights in the Eastern Caribbean. We booked it last minute with a honeymoon gift card. At the time, we lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in Tampa, busy with work and wedding planning. So a few days with no cooking, no emails, just the sea breeze sounded amazing. We got a decent room with a balcony on deck 7, starboard side. Nothing fancy, but it felt like a vacation from real life. Our neighbors were quiet, or so we thought. The first night, we met the guy in the cabin next to us. He was already outside when we got there, leaning on the railing, drink in hand, wearing a beige windbreaker zipped to his chin. Said his name was Richard, but everyone calls me Rick. He seemed nice enough, probably in his late 60s, a bit hunched, watery blue eyes and a weird smile that didn't quite match his face. I remember he kept calling Brooke young lady, even after she told him her name. We figured it was just harmless old man talk. He told us he'd been on lots of cruises before and gave tips about what to skip at the buffet. It felt like small talk, but I had the feeling he wanted to stay and chat longer than most people would. That night around 1 a.m., I woke up to footsteps, not above or below, but right next to us through the wall. A pattern, 5 or 6 steps, then stop, then again. At first, I thought Rick couldn't sleep, but it went on for over an hour. Then there was tapping, soft but steady, like someone was using a fingernail on the wall, or maybe on the metal vent between our rooms. Brooke was awake too, staring at the ceiling. She whispered, "Do you hear that too?" We didn't say much after that. The sound eventually stopped. We both fell asleep with the balcony door open a little for air. The next morning we saw Rick again. He was out early, reading a paperback in a deck chair just outside his cabin. He said good morning and asked if we tried the French toast at breakfast. Brooke smiled and said yes. I noticed his door behind him was slightly open, not wide, just barely cracked. Cruise doors lock automatically unless something is blocking them. I thought it was weird, but didn't mention it. Later that day, we played trivia, had lunch, walked around. But that night, the noises started again. Earlier this time, around 11:30 p.m. We'd just gotten back from walking the promenade when we heard it. The same pacing, but quicker, louder, then tapping again, then something new. Whispers, not clear words, just a low, breathy voice like someone was talking through the wall. Brooke sat up and stared at the vent. I got up and put my ear to it. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it was definitely a voice. I knocked, once, hard enough to be heard. Everything stopped. No more pacing, no more sound. The next morning we told a crew member, Malik, who worked on our floor. He gave us a sympathetic look and said, "Cabin walls are thin. Might just be snoring or a TV." But he wrote something on his clipboard and said he'd check in later. That afternoon, Brooke stopped in the hallway. On the railing between our room and Rick's was a pair of her underwear, a specific set, black and pink, that she packed but hadn't worn. It was folded too neatly, like someone took time to crease it. We both stared at Rick's door, closed, silent. We barely slept that night. Brooke made me leave the lights on. I pushed the chair under the doorknob, like it would help. Around 3 a.m., I heard the faintest sound of the handle moving, not turning, just a light click like someone testing it. I got up, but everything went quiet again. We didn't open the door, just sat there staring at it, waiting. In the morning, Rick was gone. Not at breakfast, not in the hallway. His door stayed shut, We figured maybe he went on a short trip or was just avoiding people. But that night after dinner, we went back to our room and something felt wrong. The cruise app showed 4 entries into our room while we were gone, but Brooke and I both had our cards with us. No one else should have been in there. Inside, nothing was obviously missing, but our bags were different. Her suitcase was half unzipped. My shaving kit was on the bed. Every zipper on every bag had been open. We called guest services. Carla from the desk showed up with a security officer about 15 minutes later. We explained everything. The sounds, the underwear, the keycard logs. Carla looked worried. The officer scanned the door and confirmed the key entries. Only from our cards and one other. Rick's. But here's the part that made our stomachs drop. Rick's room wasn't even supposed to be booked. The cruise system said cabin 7147 was empty from the start of the trip. I showed them a picture on my phone. Brooke had taken it earlier on the trip, just a selfie of us on our balcony. In the corner, you can see Rick's arm resting on the railing next door. That was proof. He was real. Security took it seriously then. They unlocked the cabin next to us. We watched from the hallway. It was spotless, bed made, nothing inside. But there was a smell, sharp like old cologne. Taped behind the bathroom mirror, they found a folded napkin with numbers on it and one word: observation. Security didn't tell us much after that, just that they'd look at footage and take it higher up. They moved us to a different room that night, 2 decks down. We didn't really enjoy the rest of the cruise. Brooke was quiet. She kept checking her luggage like something new might appear. I locked everything. We never saw Rick again. No one matching him ever turned up. We asked Malik, showed him a photo. He just said, "I haven't seen that man before." We still don't know who he was, or how he got into a room that wasn't supposed to be used. We changed all our passwords, threw out half our clothes just in case, reported it to the cruise company. They sent a generic apology and gave us 15% off a future cruise, which we never used. Brooke still checks every lock 3 times when we stay anywhere. As for me, I can't walk down a quiet, carpeted hallway under soft yellow lights without thinking of Rick's half-open door and wondering if he was ever really meant to be there at all. When we booked the cruise, it felt like a reward. Just me and my best friend Vanessa, 7 days in the Caribbean. No parents, no professors, no emails, just sunshine, drinks, and dumb fun. We just graduated from Arizona State, and that June felt like our first breath after 4 long years. Vanessa was always the social one, loud and full of energy. I was more careful. I'd never even been on a cruise, never left the mainland. So when we boarded the ship in Fort Lauderdale, I was buzzing from more than just the champagne we had in the elevator. Our room was tiny but cute, 2 single beds, a little desk, and a mirrored closet door that made everything look like a maze. We kept bumping into each other getting dressed and laughed every time. The first night went as you'd guess. Too many drinks, loud music, perfume everywhere. We came back after midnight tipsy. I remember Vanessa locking the door. Deadbolt, handle, everything. I saw her do it. We always made sure, especially since the hallways felt too quiet at night. The second night, I woke up freezing. Not just cold, but bone cold. My teeth clenched. I sat up and saw the door was open, just slightly. Hallway light was spilling in. I froze. I thought maybe Vanessa left and didn't close it right, but she was in her bed, asleep. I got up, closed it, locked it again, and stood there for a second feeling sick. Next morning I told her. She blinked at me while putting on mascara and said, "Girl, you probably forgot to lock it." But I knew I hadn't. I hadn't even had that much to drink. Still, I let it go. It's easy to doubt yourself in new places. But things kept happening. A bracelet I packed was gone. My lipstick disappeared. Vanessa laughed it off. You probably left it in the bathroom by the pool. But I knew I hadn't. I took photos of my stuff before bed, just to be sure. Didn't tell her. She thought I was overthinking. That night I took a picture of the vanity, zipped up my purse, locked the door myself, and even put one of my sneakers in front of the door. Not enough to block it, just enough to notice if it moved. We went to movie night and came back late. Everything looked fine, but the sneaker had moved a few inches. I didn't sleep. Every sound felt sharp. Around 2 a.m., I woke up again. The air felt heavy. Vanessa snored softly. I stayed still, listening. Then I heard it, a faint click. The doorknob turned, slowly, not like someone unsure, like someone who knew what they were doing. I barely breathed, but the door never opened. Just the turn, then nothing. I waited forever, then got up. The door was locked again. But the sneaker, it was across the room. Next morning, I told Vanessa everything. The handle, the sneaker, the missing stuff. Her face went pale. She admitted her headphones were missing, but didn't want to worry me. We went to guest services. Told them we thought someone had a copy of our key card. The woman behind the desk kept smiling, but her eyes looked scared. She said she'd report it and gave us a new room. Same size, 2 decks up. We packed fast. I barely slept again, but nothing happened. The next morning, we went back to get Vanessa's stuff from the closet. The cleaning staff was already inside. I walked in first. On the pillow of my old bed was my missing bracelet, curled neatly like it had never been gone. I didn't touch it. I just stood there staring because I knew that bracelet had been missing for days. Vanessa walked in behind me and froze too. She didn't say a word, didn't have to. The whole room looked untouched, like no one had stepped inside since we left. But that bracelet, it wasn't just lying there like it had fallen or been forgotten. It was placed there on purpose, perfectly centered on the pillow. It felt like someone was saying, I was here. I'm still here. I asked the cleaning lady if she'd found it while tidying. She shook her head and said she hadn't even started that bed yet. Later in the day, I got a call from a security guy. He said they looked at the digital key card logs for our old cabin. He sounded unsure, told me there were no entries between midnight and 7 a.m. on any of the nights we stayed there. Only ours. No staff entries, no master keys, nothing at all. I asked if it could have been a glitch, or maybe someone bypassed the system. He went quiet for a second, then said, That's not supposed to be possible, ma'am. He thanked me for reporting it and said someone from management would be in touch. No one ever did. After that, Vanessa and I barely spoke for the rest of the cruise. We stuck to crowded parts of the ship during the day and avoided being alone in the cabin. Every night we locked our new room tight, double-checked every time. Nothing else strange happened after that. No missing items, no odd sounds, no signs of someone being in the room. But something between us had shifted. It's like we both knew something unexplainable had happened, and we were trying to handle it in totally different ways. She became more jumpy, on edge. I just got quiet. Before the trip, we used to joke about this cruise being our last big adventure before settling into real adult life. I didn't think it would feel so real. When we got back to Arizona, I packed away all the clothes I'd worn on that trip and haven't touched them since. I haven't seen Vanessa in months either. We still text sometimes, but there's distance now. And that bracelet, I didn't take it with me. I left it there on the pillow, exactly where we found it when we left the ship. I don't know if someone had copied our key card somehow or if maybe someone had never actually left that room in the first place. But I do know one thing. That cabin door was always locked from the inside, every single time. I'm James, 36, and this happened around 7 months ago on a cruise I took with my younger sister, Nicole. She'd just finished a tough divorce, 7 years with a guy who slowly pulled her away from friends and family. I thought a vacation might help her feel more like herself again. I paid for most of it and booked a side-by-side balcony cabins on a mid-range cruise ship leaving from Galveston. I'd never been on a cruise before, and honestly, I was way more excited than I expected. My job's all meetings and stress, so this felt like my first real break in years. The ship had that weird hotel corporate vibe, always super clean and bright in the mornings. The carpet was some synthetic floral pattern that zapped me with static every time I walked across it in socks. The first few days went smoothly. Nicole seemed happier, laughing more, letting her hair down, chatting with random people at the buffet. We'd each do our own thing during the day, then meet up in the evenings to have drinks and talk while leaning over our balcony rails. Our cabins were separate, but so close we could hear each other if we leaned out a bit. We'd watch the ocean slide by and point out faraway cargo ships like kids again. Something about the rhythm of the waves, the moonlight on the water, it all felt calming, like the ship wanted you to forget the rest of the world existed. But on the fourth night, just past 3 a.m., I woke up to loud, urgent knocking on my door. Before I even looked through the peephole, I knew it was Nicole. She was knocking like she needed to warn me, not just come in. She was barefoot, shaking, her big sleep shirt twisted around her. She didn't wait for me to ask anything, just walked past me and said, "Someone was on my balcony." She looked pale like she hadn't been breathing. I tried to stay calm and asked if she was sure. She nodded, said she'd woken up and saw a man just standing outside the glass door, not knocking, not trying to get in, just watching. I stood there trying to make sense of it. Maybe a drunk guest wandered onto the wrong balcony. Maybe she imagined it. She hadn't been sleeping great and mentioned that the ship's constant motion was throwing her off, but she insisted. "His shoes made that scuffing sound," she said, "like when rubber soles drag on outdoor tile." I walked back with her, heart pounding. Her balcony was empty, no signs anyone had forced their way in. The glass door was locked from the inside. I remember how loud the engine noise felt in that silence, like white noise you couldn't turn off. I told her to sleep in my room that night. It wasn't comfortable. Cruise beds aren't made for two tossing adults. But she didn't argue. The next morning, I stopped by guest services to ask if the balconies had security cameras. Turns out only the hallways and shared spaces do. None pointed at individual balconies. The guy behind the counter didn't seem worried. "Probably just someone having a little too much fun," he said, like Nicole hadn't been terrified. The way he brushed it off really bugged me, but I let it go. I didn't want Nicole to think she was overreacting, even though I was starting to believe she wasn't. That night we didn't have our usual balcony chat. Nicole kept glancing toward the curtain, like expecting it to move. Around midnight, she said she wanted to try sleeping in her own bed again, just to feel normal. I offered to stay in her cabin. She paused, then agreed. We locked the balcony door, pulled the curtains tight, and even pushed a lounge chair in front of it. It wouldn't stop anyone, but it made us feel better. I turned off the lights, laid on the spare bed, and scrolled my phone in the dark. Nicole's breathing evened out after a while. At 2:44 a.m., I remember exactly because I checked my phone. I saw the curtain nearest the door ripple. It wasn't the wind. The AC was on the other side of the room. It moved like someone had grabbed the fabric and let go. I sat up fast, heart pounding. Nicole was still asleep. I got up and walked to the curtain, reached out and yanked it open. No one, just the sound of the waves. I stepped out barefoot, trying not to breathe too loudly. I looked left. Nothing. Right. Just the thin metal divider between balconies. That's when I noticed it. The divider didn't sit flush with the rail. There was a gap, maybe 10 inches wide, just enough space for someone to squeeze through if they turned sideways. I crouched down and saw scuff marks, shoe prints, dirt smudges, like someone had braced their foot while crawling through. My stomach dropped. The cabin next door had looked empty the whole trip. Curtains closed. No lights. I just stood there, wind brushing cold across my arms, staring at that gap. This wasn't some drunk guest. Someone had done this before, and they weren't trying to break in or steal. They just stood there and watched. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat by the balcony door with the lights on, eyes on that curtain, waiting for it to twitch. Nicole slept through it, probably from sheer exhaustion, but my brain wouldn't stop spinning. Who does that? Who slips between balconies in the dark just to stare? Next morning, I went straight back to guest services and told them everything. I didn't care how it sounded. The woman at the desk raised her eyebrows when I mentioned the scuff marks. She typed something in her computer and said security would be told. That afternoon, I was called to meet with the ship's security officer. He showed me footage from the hallway near our rooms. Nothing odd, just me and Nicole coming and going. No one else. Then I asked about the cabin next to hers, the one I thought was empty. He checked the records. That room had been unoccupied the whole cruise. No check-in, no access logs. Not even cleaning staff had gone in. After the last guest left, it was flagged for maintenance and sealed before we even boarded. That made no sense. I'd seen those footprints. That curtain had moved. Nicole had seen someone twice. Unless someone was climbing across balconies from the outside, there's no way anyone could have been out there. And doing that would be insanely dangerous. The outer railings are slick and curved. You'd have to be fearless or reckless to try it. I asked if they'd be checking the room anyway. He said yes, but I never got any updates. I didn't push. Nicole was already packing. Her hands were shaking as she zipped her bag. We both knew we weren't going to enjoy the last days of the cruise. That night we slept in my cabin, doors locked, furniture blocking everything. Every creak of the ship made me jump. We got off 2 days later and flew home. Nicole hasn't gone near a cruise since. I get it. I probably won't either. Sometimes I think about that exact moment, the curtain moving. If I'd pulled it back just 1 second later, would I have seen a face staring back? A body halfway through that tiny gap? There was something about the stillness of it all, like whoever was out there didn't want to make noise, just be seen. I still think about it when I wake up at night, staring into the darkness outside my window. It doesn't feel like fear. It's more like a low hum in the background, something you know but can't explain. Nicole and I talked about it once, months later. She said something I can't forget. He didn't want to come in, she whispered. He wanted to be seen. And honestly, that might be the part that scares me the most.